A discussion on the cash balance spreadsheet with Jennifer Light. Jennifer?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Light. I'm the KLRD analyst that deals with the KSDE budget. In front of you, you have a buff sheet that has cash balances for specific funds in USDs. Last week during the discussions, there was some information that had been provided by KLRD about the all funds balance, which was incorrect. So we just want to make sure that we have the correct information in front of you all. For the all funds balance for school year 2024-2025, it is $2.9 billion, not $5 billion. So on this document, what we have provided to you is the cash balances for the general fund, the supplemental general fund, the special education fund, the special education co-op fund, and the all funds. And this is cash balance as of the beginning of the school year. So when you see school year 2024-2025, that would be July 1st of 2024. In the all funds, we have a note that includes what exactly funds there were for all of that is included in the all funds amount. What happened was I just missed a sum column in the middle of the table, which double counted. So I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to say how much I appreciate our staff. The amount of information in a short window of time that they get for us is tremendous. And thank you for bringing this updated chart to our attention. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Petty.
And I want to thank Jennifer because I talked to her on Friday and also I met with her again today. I do think that it's important for us to have correct information because that incorrect number of over $5 billion was thrown out 4 different times last week. And it just goes to show that that was a number, far exceeding the actuals. And if you also look at the table, you can see that there's years where there actually are negative ending balances. And since she's added the co-ops, I would again remind people that that's 24 co-ops that encompasses. So thank you for updating the information. And I think it is very imperative to make sure when we talking about these unencumbered funds without any parameters, which we're still doing, unless you read the note, that they're accurate.
Any other questions? Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you tell me, is there something to be said too in terms of the timing of when funds have to be spent? Aren't there some parameters in place in that regard?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So there are specific dates that the KSD releases funds to the agent or to the individual USDs. So those work throughout the year, and there is a process for that. I've got a full calendar if you would like a copy of it. Additionally, then some of these funds have specific uses that they have to be used for.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I also, I'm concerned that we made decisions last week based on information that looked quite a bit different. So, when you look at these numbers, I'm actually surprised it's this low too, because of the time frame that has eclipsed here. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want some clarity. First, I think it was said that there were negative ending balances. Can you clarify on that? And then also, all funds has gone from 2.27 billion to 2.92 billion in the from 2021 to 2025. Am I reading that correctly?
Jennifer.
So the all funds balance in school year 2020 to 2021 was $2.3 billion, and it is just under $3 billion in 24-25. I believe that what was discussed earlier is that there was in the change from the previous year, there is a negative number. There is positive numbers in each of these funds at the cash balance time, but it was a decrease in the amount from the previous year for the cash balance.
Okay, so just so I'm reading this correctly, there are just under $3 billion in funds rolling over, and the most that anything has had a change year over year to draw on those funds appears to be around $14 million. Is that a correct reading?
Jennifer?
For these specific funds that we have called out, yes, that is correct. The all funds does include that entire list below, which is 30-some funds. So there may be different funds that had a different change. That does include the capital outlay and the bonded interest areas for schools. So, but in the ones that we have presented, the general fund, supplemental, special education, you are correct, and that 14 million is the highest.
Senator Claes?
Just clarifying, 14 million was drawn down off of 3 billion. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Senator Petty?
So just to follow up with that, Jennifer, and as was asked a little earlier, I think by Senator Holscher, and that you referred to, is that when you look at if you look at the all funds for 24, 25, then that number, that's a summation of all school districts across the state, some of which don't have any ending balances. And also the fact that if we take bond and interest, that those funds that would be reflected could only be expended for specific things. I'm just using bond and interest as one category. But would that be true that within the school finance budgets across our school districts, many of these funds can only be expended for specific items?
Jennifer?
Mr. Chair, that is correct, that several of these funds can only be used for those specific items, and that this is a point in time. So the cash balance is as of July 1st in the year.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Alley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm noticing the all funds changed from previous year, and it looks like in 2021, we were under 100 million, and in 23 and 24, we're over 227 million and 309. Can you tell us why that's a jump, why that increased?
Jennifer?
So part of that is due to the capital improvement bonding that has happened. As far as other reasons, I'd have to go back and look at the specific funds to see what the differences are, but I know part of it is due to the capital improvements bonding.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate your bringing the update to us. Committee, we'll start out now with a hearing on Senate Bill 290, providing funding for the State Historical Society to issue a scope statement, plan the work to be accomplished, and issue a request for proposals for the master plan for the Quindaro Ruins Archaeological Park in Wyandotte County and implement such a master plan. We'll start out with an overview by the reviser, Jessica Pringle. Jessica, welcome committee.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, committee. Jesse with the Reviser of Statutes Office. Senate Bill 290 in front of you, as introduced, proposes an appropriation of $600,000 from the State General Fund to go to the Kansas State Historical Society for the fiscal year 2026. This bill would require that the State Historical Society spend not less than $250,000 of that $600,000 appropriation to issue a scope statement, a plan of work to be accomplished, and to issue a request for proposal for a master plan for the Quindaro ruins that are located in Wyandotte County, Kansas. And monies beyond those $250,000 shall be used to implement that master plan's phase 1 renovations. The bill also has a statement of legislative intent to state that the legislature has the intent to provide additional funds for future fiscal years to finish the work based upon that master plan. And if enacted, the bill becomes effective upon publication in the statute book.
Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll start out with the proponents. We'll start out with Senator Haley. Senator Haley, welcome to committee.
Chairman Villager and members of the committee, thank you so much. I will be brief. First of all, as was covered by the revisor, this is basically an appropriation that would go to the State Historical Society that would make a master plan for Quindaro. I think probably everyone here knows, Mr. Chair and members, what Quindaro is, what the history is, how meaningful it is. You do have my written testimony, and I'm very concerned today primarily because there was a companion bill in the House that, due to some back and forth, may now end up with, instead of an appropriation, necessary appropriation for a master plan, a cohesive plan for the development, which has been stalled for decades. And the urgency here, by the way, I should back up and say, I'm glad to see this bill here. I did not introduce the bill. This is not David Haley's bill. I do represent the district. I was born in Old Quindaro and have known about it all my life, and have pushed mighty hard along with other advocates, some whose name we know very well from the legislative advocacy and others, to finally come to this day, to have a master plan put together for the development, hopefully in time for FIFA. We in Wyandotte County are exceptionally proud of the unique history, of the intercultural history that Quindaro symbolizes, not only for our state prior to its being a state, but also now what it means to the nation. We're in a prime time with the passage of this legislation to have the State Historical Society put a master plan into place by which we can share our great story that was uniquely Kansans, but now it should be shared with the world. In closing, and I'll be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time, there has been some obstruction time and again, and you may hear about that today, as to who owns or manages or what have you. It's these same arguments, frankly, that have led to nothing being done on this. I mean, to each of us here, Ways and Means, each of us here in the legislature, to many of my constituents, say, this is obvious. Why don't you get this done? Well, there's some out-of-state, primarily obstruction, that has caused there to be confusion, and that confusion continues. And in the continuation of that, we end up with nothing. I just ask each of you on the committee to overlook what historically has been a problem for the movement of this. We're running out of time to put Quindaro in place in that area that we can, well, hopefully capture some of the FIFA visitors that will come, and have in a cohesive way a point of pride for all of us in the state. Please hold fast, if you will, Mr. Chair and members. Sadly, the House did not take any action, and the alternative was exactly what we don't need, recommending another task force. We need a master plan in place, and we need a neutral, professional entity like the State Historical Society to implement it. Finally, I will say again, I would appreciate a consideration, should you work this bill, when you do, again, it's not my bill, that it take effect, publication in the Register. We need to move forward with all deliberate speed on this, and I thank you and be happy to stand for questions, Mr. Chair, and members at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Senator. Questions, Senator Clays.
Thank you, Senator. Just clarification. So you would like this bill passed out as is, except for one amendment to change the publication? That's it?
On the Register.
Good to go.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, this has been going on for years, as you indicated. And the bill, I don't understand the not less than $250,000 to develop a plan. Is there not already some type of plan developed that you just need somebody to grab the ball and run?
Mr. Chair, Senator Peck, there have been various discussions over the years. So I personally have been involved for about 3 decades or more. I first put Quindaro on my first year in the Senate 25 years ago on the State Historic Registry. That was a resolution that I passed. I was so proud of it. Nothing in my 25 years meaningful has come of it. There's discussions all the time, different entities. You'll hear from the church, you'll hear from civic organizations that everyone knows that something needs to be done, but there's been no cohesive movement. And I'm excited that the State Historical Society, a respected entity that has a track record, could put the master plan in place that we would then implement.
I guess my question is, for the Historical Society, is there some type of guidelines, some type of skeleton master plan out there that could save them some time to get this moving forward? I'm with you. It's like, this is ridiculous. This should have been done a long time ago. But so you don't know of anything that's in writing or in the plan that's been developed that the Historical Society could use that as a launching pad?
Again, Mr. Chair, Senator Peck, I don't. I mean, there are different ones that are moving out there. They're pretty adroit with that. There are other entities. I remember Freedom Frontier, I may be saying it wrong. There's another entity that had a plan too. But part of it has been conflictual, where they've said, well, who can come together and how will this be introduced? There's also been the question if this is at some point a federal treasure, which has been, I went out there with Senator Roberts, Pat Roberts, various congressional members, and what is that vision? There has not been how we implement that, and also that the property cannot be built on if it is a historic. So, I mean, how would that pull together? So I'm sure there are various ideas that would be submitted or shared with the State Historical Society that are already in existence or that people have worked on or entities have worked on. But to my knowledge, there's not one that has risen above the fray to the point that it could be implemented at this point. And that's sad. It's beyond sad. It's deplorable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the second bite at the apple. A comment, not a question. But the senator before us has a deep understanding of the history of this, the ruins, and what's been going on with it. But just by way of informing the committee, members who are new, last session, we put in this committee $250,000 for the master plan after doing the research and finding that there was no plan in place. It did make it through the process. It made it to the governor's desk. The governor did decide to veto that item. It was line item vetoed. So we're just back with the same portion of that request and then an additional sum for the first phase. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for being here. So as I'm looking at this bill, my understanding, and you can correct me, is that the State Historical Society will lay out the scope, but then there's going to be, they're going to issue a request for proposals for the master plan. Would that be correct?
Senator Haley.
Mr. Chair, Senator Petty, the way I read it is that there would be the request for proposals for that plan and that there would be the opportunity to pull it together under the initial $250,000 that would be there. So it very well could, in conjunction, work with pre-existing plans that are out. I'm hoping, or my personal hope, as the one who's in the district and in the county where we are, Senator Petty, in Wyandotte County, that plan will move forward quickly, so quickly that it's already in the works, that there may be one already that the State Historical Society will undertake to review and say it's feasible, that it can be implemented. And then that we go to the second phase or the remaining funds that are available to implement what that plan looks like. I don't want to put in my view, but imagine a cohesive ability to view from various parties to interact and to come with an interactive experience like we have other historical sites around the country, and to have that in a cohesive way to bring people across that, the whole jurisdiction, and to see the region and to understand the unique story, the history of the township that existed from 1850. But again, I didn't mean to go, I mean, I just think that there are many great ideas that are out there, and this will cohesively, if passed, compel the State Historic Society to undergird what could be good plans already and have them implemented.
Senator Petty.
But it does have them issue a request for proposal for a master plan. So it would be not just looking at if there is one out there, but as you alluded to earlier, is that there unfortunately have been conflicting conflicting organizations that have not been able to necessarily always come together. So hopefully, if this were to pass, that once there is a master plan, that those groups that haven't always been able to work together will support who the master plan goes to.
Certainly hope so. There's a lot of frustration in our county and others who've been involved with this, that there's been obstruction, and the community as a whole are, in fact, I hope we all are as Kansans, we're ready to get this deal done. We're tired of the, obstruction, and let's just move forward.
Senator Holster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator, for being here. The Quindaro ruins are privately owned, is my understanding, it's the board of the AME Church, I believe. And can you tell me, I know that they've been working on plans, how would they be included in the decision-making process?
Senator Haley.
Well, Mr. Chair and Senator Holscher, obviously, I think that all component pieces should be included. I believe that there will be a representation from a member of the AME Church and who will speak to that. What we're hoping is that we show the leadership through what the master plan looks like and bring all entities, the church and others who have a stake, who are stakeholders in the region and the development of the region. And when this plan is submitted, would include or bring everyone to focus on what we need to do, is to have this finally open and not continue to sit and lay fallow, not paying taxes. It's a non-tax-paying entity that has tremendous opportunity to generate major, I think, dollars or tourism dollars from historic entities. So whomever has the other interest or other interests, including the church, if a master plan, or if and when this master plan is submitted, will be brought to bear. I shouldn't bring this up, but I will. We had the issue of what land we could use, or land use in Wyandotte County might be better used than to lay fallow when we went years ago with for the building of the Speedway. And it was determined then, though we can't do it now, but through eminent domain, that there was economic blight. In other words, the value of the land was such that if in fact it were built differently, in this case to build a speedway and surrounding area, it would be of such greater public benefit that we would just have to, or be allowed to have that property. There's a similar situation, frankly. The 70 acres or so that compose the Quindaro Township, affectionately called the ruins, is economic blight for its underutilization, laying fallow year after year, decade after decade, because of obstructionists who, claim a right, but again, pay no taxes and by and large live away from our state. I won't go into that argument any further, but I'll be pleased at some point in time to stand for further questions.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Might be getting hung up a little bit on RFP processes here, so just wanted to give some clarification. The RFP would be going out to ask for proposals from firms that craft master plans for historical sites. And then that entity would bring together all of the stakeholders, whether it be neighbors, adjacent property owners, current property owners, et cetera, and craft that master plan together with those individuals and all of their input. So it is a two-step process. This isn't an RFP that would go out to one of the stakeholders. I think that might be some of the confusion here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for your presentation. Two questions. One, has a department, did anybody apply for the Department of Commerce? You talked about tourism here just a minute ago, and how much money this might bring for economic development. Has the Department of Commerce or the county or the city playing any part in this at this level, or is it just coming to the state?
Well, Mr. Chair, Senator Fagg, innumerable. We've heard from different entities over the scope of many years, many decades. And let me apologize if I appear frustrated, and I really are. This is a moment of intense urgency, once again, but many entities, commerce, the local unified government, so many entities. I remember somebody had a great plan a few years ago. He was trying to promote that was going to redevelop the area and have a golf course on it. I mean, there have been so many over the years that people have wanted to do. I remember they wanted to do a homeless veterans over by the, I mean, have been many, and I think that there'll be many existing, that if the requests for proposals go out, there will be several that will show up with already, as was asked earlier, that will show up who've done some legwork already.
Senator Fagg.
Looking for funding for this master plan, is what I was saying from these different groups. I was saying that we'd be looking for funding from these different groups to help with the master plan. You know, has anybody, they all have ideas, but the question is, who's putting the money up, so.
Well, and again, part of the problem has been the tussle or the wrestling with there being no cohesive plan, that there's been this pushback from entities who do have a proprietary interest in some of the land because there was not the force of a governmental entity, which perhaps in the future there may be, there should be, because we want to see something happen of pride for Wyandotte County and our history. But I would think that, you know, 600,000 will be overall a drop in the bucket for ultimately what it's going to take to fully develop it. And I imagine there'd have to be some private contribution as well.
Senator Fagg.
Follow-up question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I read this bill, it talks about that it is an intent of the legislature to provide additional funds for the Quindaro Ruins Archaeological Park in future fiscal years based on such master plan. So the question would be, is this going to be a $5 million project, a $50 million project? I kind of have a little trouble with that wording. You know, I think you'd have one just to get the money, see what the master plan says, and then go from there. Just my opinion. Thank you.
I think so too, Senator Fagg, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I really think this is such low-hanging fruit. It wouldn't cost $1 million. I mean, to really dust it off and put everything together and have the tours scheduled and have a cohesive visitor center at the top and the ability, I don't think it's going to cost that much. This is not a star bond project. I mean, this is not, I mean, it lends itself to something that really opens up the door and sells itself. It's an automatic understanding. I mean, if you can almost tour it now. It just needs a cohesive, applied, ongoing application for what it means and how it is, and to have it put in place.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Senator. Appreciate you being here today.
Again, I'm grateful, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Committee, we also have written only from Tyrone Gardner, Mayor of Unified Government of Wyandotte County and Kansas City, Kansas, and Robert Gibson Health Forward Foundation. Opponents, is there any opponents here today? Seeing none. Neutral, we have the Reverend Stacy Evans, Chairperson of the Western University Association of AME Church, and written only by Ty Edwards, historian. Welcome, committee.
Good morning, Chair and board members. My name is Reverend Stacy Evans, and I am here to present testimony regarding Bill number 290. I am an AME pastor who has been the chairperson of this project for the last 16 years. And I have come today to share with you some of these updates. In the meeting with the House the other day, on March the 11th, public hearing, there was some discrepancy as to how large the historical area of the property is, and today I bring evidence of its size in a supporting document from the National Historic Landmark application prepared by Rosen Preservation for the National Park Service. So the UG said that the property was 200 acres, and I said it was 97. In this presentation, Rosen created the application for the National Historic Landmark, and they say that it's 70.5 acres. There was also some question as to whether a landowner can maintain ownership should the land become a National Historic Landmark park. And then I have presided the actual language from the House of Representatives Bill 5878. And on the last page there, it very clearly says that you can still own the property and for it to become a National Historic Landmark, and that you can receive funds in the paragraph before that one. The Secretary may provide technical and financial assistance to any entity with which the Secretary has entered into a cooperative agreement under paragraph number 1. And then the next one, it talks about the historic landmark shall not prohibit any actions that may otherwise be taken by a property owner, including any owner of the landmark with respect to the property of the owner. And so we come in as neutral. We're not against the Historic Society managing the funds. We just feel that as landowners, the major landowner, that we should have some say about where the money is going, be a part of the master planning and all of that. And then also, a lot has been done. People keep saying that nothing has been done, and so I've just made some copies of some things that have been done. And on the last page, I think I gave you all a page that tells you everything that's in here. But we had a 2-year, a whole year where we all, the whole community, planned a symposium. All of the stakeholders that people say are not working together, we've been working together for many years now, at least the 16 years that I've been here. And so this is a symposium that we all worked together for a whole year to present. About 1,000 people attended. It was for 2 days, and it was absolutely wonderful. Out of it came a whole lot of collaborations, one of which was Johnson County Community College, and all the other colleges. Well, I won't say all of them, but K-State, KU, UMKC, all help us to put on all of these events for clearing and cleaning the property, and the Unified Government and Freedom's Frontier, the Wyandotte Nation, Old Quindaro Museum, the Vernon Center. Just one event after the other, where we're clearing and cleaning this property. The UG helped us to widen the trails. They're much more passable than they've ever been. We were able to get the Sunflower Grant last year, and with that money, we have secured a company called Vireo to do a concept design plan for us because we could not afford the master plan. So, but the concept design plan kind of is a roadmap. It helps us to get to the master plan, and that whole the phases of the concept plan are included in the Vireo report. And who is putting money forward thus far has been the AME Church through these grants that we have received from Sunflower. I also gave you guys a little picture there of the property and this map that has been made by one of our biggest supporters over the years, which is the Kansas Historic Society. We have a good relationship with them. And this shows you the actual 22 foundations that still exist there. And then this next page, the features, shows you what every feature from the town, but the ones that are highlighted in gold show you the 22 features that were evaluated by the national parks, came and did a complete evaluation, and has proven that these 22 foundations you can still see and are there. There are many AME churches in this area of this Quindaro ruins on both sides of the river who are tax-paying citizens on both sides of the river, so we do pay taxes, and are present in the community. I have a lot more that I could say, but I think I just want to share with you that a lot has happened, a lot is going on. The community is working together. Through our Vireo concept design team, we've held 2 of the meetings, of the 4 meetings that are to be held, and they were both very well attended, 100 or so people. We have a company we use called Urban Hikes that does do tours already to the tune of about 500 people a year. And then I myself trek about 300 people through there myself every year. So near 1,000 people. It is passable, but it's not as good, nearly as good as it could be. And most recently, we secured through UMKC a Mellon grant for $150,000. What we intend to do in our next, with these meetings that we're having now, is to get up signage so that people, when they do come for World Cup in 2026, they will at least have signs, they'll have QRL codes, people can listen to what this foundation used to be and some of the stories of people who used to live there, and they can find their way through the ruins. There'll be some signage, trails, not nearly as good as we hope to have in the future, but something that people can visit when World Cup comes. Should we receive any appropriations here, we look forward to working with the Kansas Historic Society. We're just asking that since we are the major landowner who has been taking care of the property up until this point, along with all the community stakeholders, we support any memorialization of Marvin Robinson and Jesse Hope, who were men who helped to save the ruins from a landfill deal back in the 80s. We want to work with everybody. There are a lot of people who feel they hold a stake, but there's only one major landowner, and we have been doing our best to develop the property responsibly.
Thank you, Stacy. Questions? Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Stacy, for being here. So it does sound like there's a plan that's in process in terms of some of the things that are happening. And I'm wondering if you could tell me, you said you've been there 16 years. Can you tell me really because a plan like this does take some time, obviously, to get things in place, to get the right partners there. Can you tell me what Quindaro was like when you arrived? What shape was it in at that point?
It was in pretty terrible shape, just a little path this wide. I have pictures of me and the National Parks people when they came to help me find all 22 foundations that were literally walking under limbs, and they've got hatchets, they're hatching trees. It's literally this wide. But now it's wide enough for 2 lanes of traffic because we were able to clear and clean that brush. The UG provided some incredible equipment I didn't even know existed. They could take down trees, and then they put down some gravel, and so it's much wider now. You can pass through there. And then all of these volunteers came and cleared away the brush from the foundation so you can see things that you couldn't see at all before. There's a hotel there that has 15-foot walls still standing. Most of the ruins had been recovered for preservation's sake. So in order to see most of them, you would have to uncover them a little bit, but it's in much better shape today than it was when I found it.
Senator Petty.
Reverend Evans, thank you for being here. And so in your testimony, you mentioned an amendment that you'd like to see added to this bill. Could you expound on that?
As stated, our position is neutral, but can be moved to full support with these considerations. Acknowledgement of ownership. The bill should explicitly recognize that the Quindaro ruins are privately owned by the Western University Association of the AME Church. And inclusion in decision-making, since we own the land and we already have plans in progress, our organization should be included in discussions alongside the Kansas Historic Society regarding how funds are allocated and utilized in Quindaro. And then finally, alignment with existing plans. State-funded initiatives should support and complement our ongoing preservation efforts and development plans. And I just want to reiterate, we have a very good working relationship with the Kansas Historic Society.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. And that's great to hear that you already have been working with the Kansas Historical Society. And then you shared this information about you've also have with local partners. I mean, you mentioned Johnson County Community College and
Kansas City, Kansas Community College.
Kansas Community College,
AU,
the Unified Government, because they've helped to provide. So you've been
Wyandotte Nation.
Wyandotte Nation. So you've been working with these to be able to, as you said, there are some, maybe a limited amount of tours, but there are some tours that are currently going on with the site. And which definitely makes it much more accessible than, just as you said, when you came here, when there was a path not as, that you might be stepping one foot in front of the other in order to either get there. So really appreciate all the work that you and your congregation have done to keep this on the forefront. And so thanks for the information that you provide. So there's a lot here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Reverend, for being here today. We'll close our hearing on Senate Bill 290, and we will move. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given the rapid nature of this process, I'm going to make a motion here and move that the committee work SB 290 at this time, that the bill be amended to take effect on publication in the Register, and that the bill be passed as amended. That's a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Owen seconds. Questions? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I think we just heard from Reverend Evans that it's important that this bill acknowledge the chief, the major landowner in the legislation that's being put forward. So I would ask the maker of this motion if that's a consideration.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason that I did not include that is that codifying in statute ownership of a parcel of land has ramifications, and there doesn't appear to be a strong case for doing so in this particular statute. The owners of this land are obviously going to be a part of any master planning process. Otherwise, nothing will happen to the site. So it is redundant to place those things into statute, but also there are just the issues of codifying ownership in statute. Ownership of parcels of land change over time, and that would not be wise to, for all time, put into a statute book the ownership of a piece of property.
Senator Petty.
Well, it appears that the AME Church as the primary that has been it has been verified that it's 70.5 acres, and they are the primary land owner. They own 95% of the site by the Western University Association of the AME Church Board. So a master plan that doesn't acknowledge the working with the 95% owner of the property seems to be somewhat short-sighted if we're really interested in helping this move forward.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, the RFP process is to select a firm that will go through a process. It's not any different than having a group of people come together for like the 10-year transportation program that we all went through, where we have local consults and we have people discuss all the different parts and pieces before a plan is put together. Obviously, the major landowner in the area is going to be a huge part of this process. Codifying that into statute is a whole other thing. This is about just issuing an RFP for the master plan, not dictating the terms of the master plan or its process, but that process will obviously have the major landowners involved. I think it just gets a little silly to start dictating every little thing into a very brief statute that is just appropriating the funds so that a master plan RFP can go out.
Other questions? Senator Holscher.
Thank you. That puzzles me a little bit to some extent because we codify guardrails, rules, and legislation quite frequently. And it does feel concerning that we would not include the landowner to some extent in the actual wording of the statute. So again, like I said, we codify lots of guardrails and rules and statutes, so it just seems a little odd not to do the same here.
Other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have they done any kind of feasibility study for this? We're starting right into a master plan. Has there been any work kind of ahead of time with anything like that? That's a yes or no.
Senator Claes.
There have been different entities that have attempted to move this thing forward, and I think that's why we're here today, because it hasn't really moved forward in any meaningful way to the point that we have an archaeological site that is attracting visitors from out of state. So that's where we're at today. I would suggest we pass this. Obviously, it's going to be a conferenceable position. The House did something far different than what we're doing here today, so those differences can be reconciled.
Other questions? Senator Fagg.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be in opposition to this, and it's because of the wording between line 17 and 22. Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to a hearing on House Bill 2195, establishing the Kansas Technical College Operating Grant Fund administered by the State Board of Regents. We'll start out with a revisor overview. Jesse Pringle. Jesse, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee. House Bill 2195 establishes a new section of law. This section establishes the Kansas Technical College Operating Grant Fund in the state treasury, and that fund is to be administered by the State Board of Regents. All expenditures from the fund are for instructions and operations to meet target objectives established by post-secondary technical education authorities for each technical college's region and the entire state. So when you're looking at this, it also defines what a technical college is, and it includes Wichita State University Campus of Applied Sciences and Technology, Flint Hills Technical College, Fort Hays State University, North Central Kansas Technical College, Manhattan Area Technical College, Northeast Kansas Technical College, Fort Hays State University, Northwest Kansas Technical College, Salina Area Technical College, and the Washburn Institute of Technology. If the bill is enacted, it would become effective upon publication in the statute book. And since this is from the House, it passed the House chamber on a vote of 123-0 in February.
Questions for Jesse? Seeing none, thank you, Jesse. We'll start out with proponents. Jim Ganant, president of the Kansas Technical Colleges. Jim, welcome committee.
Good morning. I'm also president and CEO of Manhattan Area Technical College, and a few of you might remember a couple of weeks ago, we were on the floor of the Senate being recognized because we were ranked #1 best two-year college in the nation in 2024. And that ranking speaks to all 7 of us, actually, in what we do. And this operating grant is a huge help to us. We've had it for a couple of years. As you may recall, we do not get local property taxes, unlike a school district or a community college. And yet, while the key word with many of you these days is efficiency, I want to add to that with the tech colleges, not only are we efficient, we're effective. 5 of our 7 members are in the top 25 in the nation for graduation rates among two-year colleges. 5 of our 7 members were identified by the Aspen Institute among the top 150 two-year colleges in the nation. Last week, the state regents got an enrollment summary report, and in that report, most of the rising data, if you will, concerns the technical colleges. Over the past 10 years, our 7 members have bucked the trend. We've increased enrollment of males by 62.5%. We've increased females by 34.5%. Our headcount has gone up by 48.5% the last 10 years, and our full-time equivalency by over 20%. We have strong retention rates. Less than 20% of our courses are delivered through distance education. Why? We're teaching people how to be plumbers, mechanics, nurses, welders. It's hands-on. Our 7 members used Lightcast to put together a return on investment. What's our economic impact? They looked at the academic year 23-24, and for that year, we had an economic impact of almost 7-to-1 from state appropriations. We came back with an impact of over $700 million, over 9,000 jobs. This operating grant is a transformational difference maker for all of our institutions. It's allowed us to put forth more capacity for programs, more students, better facilities and equipment to keep up with what employers are expecting. So this is an example of an investment by this body, by the entire legislature, with a rapid return on investment. And that's not something you always get to hear. We thank you for it, we're good at it, and we're going to keep doing it. And I'd be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Jim. Questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. You talked about percentages there. What is your head count? If you know.
Overall, for the 7 of us, it's around 10,000 students.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a big proponent of our technical colleges and what they do for our youth and helping them realize that there are opportunities outside of a 4-year degree or further. My question for you, sir, is what exactly is the purpose of creating this account? Like, I mean, is it just so that it'll be funded in the future, or what's the goal here?
This goal with this bill is to put it into statute with the Treasury so that we don't have that issue every year. Then it's up to just what is appropriated each year. So we don't have to go through both battles. 3 years ago, Representative Howe with the House Higher Ed Budget Committee asked us, what do you guys need to either sustain and or grow what you're doing? And we had put together this idea of what we call a base operating grant. Again, without that local taxing authority, it's very difficult, if almost impossible, for us to do bonds. This money allows us to renovate, work with partnerships in donations. Many of us were able to capitalize with the recent ARPA funds as a match with what this provided. In my case, we put in place a new advanced technology center, 47,000 square feet. But because I had these resources plus the ARPA funds, I was also able to gather over $2 million in local investment. So these allow us to leverage a lot of things related to equipment, facilities, specialists, and working with our employers.
If I may.
Senator Owens.
All right, so I just, again, want to make sure that I'm understanding the idea in creating these accounts is to utilize funds you guys have already been receiving over the last couple of years, but just in a more formalized accounting process, or is there an appropriation ask or a future demand transfer expected to go into these funds?
Jim?
It's always going to be subject to annual appropriations, but this gives us a permanent placeholder for the operating grant within statute.
Okay, all right, that's what I needed to know. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What kind of funding did you receive last year?
The last 2 fiscal years, including this one, each institution received $1.5 million in this operating grant, so $10.5 million total.
Okay.
And we agreed among the 7 of us to that split.
Okay. And does this tie back to the what we had in appropriations, the 21 million? This kind of sounds like the same thing. Is it something different?
No, it's different.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you, you also get funding with, from the state tied in with the community colleges?
We get funding for eligible courses, both tiered and non-tiered. We get a much smaller allocation for capital outlay. And then, of course, if we participate in Excel and CTE, the tech ed for the high school students, then again, based on enrollment and qualifying courses, we get reimbursed for that.
This is, this grant would be on top of what you have normally been getting, is that correct? You haven't been receiving this in the past?
We've had it the past 2 fiscal years. Yeah, this year, and again, it's been, if you look at the last couple of pages of the testimony, you're going to see examples of how each institution has used these funds to advance capacity and capability. And that's really what it does in lieu of having local property taxes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Fagg.
So exactly how much are we requesting for this year?
We are asking for the same amount, 10.5 million.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I guess, Jim, I would ask you, did the House put this in?
Yes,
I mean,
Representative Howe.
The 10.5?
I'm not sure what they've appropriated, Steve. They've appropriated 7 million, so they've cut it by 1/3.
Okay.
And again, without the local property tax, That's a big hit for our 7 members.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Committee, we also have written only from Juliet Meitl, M-E-I-T-L, and we have no opponents and no neutral. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll do, sorry, the same thing we did last time. I'd make a motion to work HB 2195 to change the date of publication from the statute book to the register and to pass the bill as amended.
We have a motion, we have a second. Senator Peterson, second. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to a hearing on HB 2221, abolishing the Department of Corrections Alcohol and Drug Abuse Treatment Fund, creating the Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Service Alcohol and Drug Abuse Treatment Fund, and transferring the monies and liabilities from such abolished fund to the Kansas Department of Aging and Disabilities Alcohol and Drug Abuse Treatment Fund. We'll start out with an overview by Jesse Pringle. Jesse?
Good morning, committee. These short titles the chairman is reading are very spot on. So for House Bill 2021, what it does is it amends 2 sections of law. It abolishes the Department of Corrections Alcohol and Drug Abuse Treatment Fund. It creates the Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Services Alcohol and Drug Abuse Treatment Fund, and it transfers all the monies from that abolished fund to this new fund. So in Section 1, you can find KSA 8-1567. This is the section for the crime of driving under the influence, and under current law in subsection Q, it directs fines to go to the Community Alcoholism and Intoxication Programs Fund and the Department of Corrections Alcohol and Drug Abuse Treatment Fund. So there you can see that the bill creates the Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Services Alcohol and Drug Abuse Treatment Fund. In that place, it transfers all the monies and then abolishes that Department of Corrections Alcohol and Drug Abuse Treatment Fund. Section 2 amends KSA 74-7336, and what this does is it just amends a reference again to the new fund instead of the Department of Corrections Alcohol and Drug Abuse Treatment Fund. This was passed out of the House. The House Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice amended the bill only for technical corrections, and then the House Chamber passed the bill 123-0 in February.
Questions for Jesse? Seeing none, thank you, Jesse. We'll start out with proponents. Jennifer King, Kansas Department of Corrections. Jennifer, welcome committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer King. I'm the Executive Director of Public Affairs for the Kansas Department of Corrections. You have my testimony in front of you. I'll keep my remarks brief. Currently, this fund is solely used by the Department of Corrections to reimburse KDADs for third time and subsequent DUI treatment services rendered by providers that are contracted by KDADs. When the third time DUI services program was first created, participants did include KDOC offenders who were serving in the post-release portion of their sentence under parole supervision, in addition to community corrections probationers and court service offenders in the judicial branch. However, subsequent legislation has since moved these KDOC offenders out of this program. KDOC and KDADs are in agreement that given KDOC's lack of jurisdiction over the program and its participants, it would be more efficient for KDADs to receive these funds directly. That concludes my testimony today. Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
sir.
We also have a proponent, Drew Adkins, Kansas Department of Aging Disability Service. Drew, welcome committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to share proponent testimony from KDODS and the Behavioral Health Services Commission. Like my colleague at KDOC, I'll keep my comments brief. Just want to concur that we did work on this over the interim legislative period in the fall and came to an agreement that this would hopefully streamline efficiencies and enhance the end result for the consumer and also our provider. One other thing to point out from KDOT's perspective, this wouldn't change the program at all. It would just essentially be adding those updates to bring the fund into our control moving forward. And with that, I'll yield back my time. I'm happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Questions for Drew? Seeing none, thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
There are opponents. Are there any opponents here today? Seeing none, neutral? Seeing none, we'll close our hearing on HB 2221. Senator Clayson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee work House Bill 2221 and that the bill be passed favorably.
Motion, do we have a second? Three of them. Senator Owens, seconds. That's right. Okay. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have a hearing on SCR 1612, proposing to amend the Constitution of the State of Kansas by allowing the legislature to contract public debt and pledges to the payment thereof and the full faith, credit, and taxing power of the state, and giving the legislature authority over all matters concerning the contracting of public debt. We'll start out with an overview by David Weiss. David, welcome committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Concurrent Resolution 1612 is a proposal to amend Article 11 of the Constitution of the State of Kansas. It's the article that concerns finance and taxation. This would add a new section that would authorize the legislature, beginning with the 2026 session, to contract public debt and pledges to the payment thereof, the full faith, credit, and taxing power of the state. The amendment goes on to say that the debt would have to be authorized for the purpose specified by law, and upon a declaration of the legislature in such law, that the debt is appropriate after considering the cost effectiveness and debt service efficiency for the state. The amendment does provide the legislature the authority to establish by law all matters relating to the contracting of public debt, including but not limited to the kinds of notes, general obligation bonds, revenue bonds, or other evidence of debt that may be issued by the state. The amendment would be submitted to the electors for approval at the 2025 primary election held in August. I'd stand for any questions.
Questions for David? Senator Petty.
David, I appreciate your explanation, but how does this change what we're doing currently?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, well, in the Constitution currently, if it's like that debt that's backed by the full faith and taxing power of the state, that's currently capped at $1 million. That's been in place since really statehood, 1861. And then also there would be an election by the voters to approve any such debt like that. What we do now, through the KDFA, the Kansas Development Finance Authority, it's not general obligation debt of the state. That specifically says, if you look at those bonding provisions we usually draft, that these are not considered debts under our, Section 6 and 7 of Article 11 of the Constitution of the State of Kansas. So it's not backed by the full faith and credit and taxing power of the state, though obviously the legislature does make the debt service payments, but it's not backed by any sort of taxing power. There's no tax that would be there directly for that debt service payment.
Senator Petty.
So does it increase our responsibility or decrease our responsibility towards debt?
David.
Mr. Chair, Senator, yes, it would in effect increase the responsibility, because now if these kind of like, say, a general obligation bond is issued by the state, by the legislature, then it would be backed by, if there's any default on that, the legislature would have to take some sort of action, either through a tax or some sort of appropriation to pay those debts, to pay those bondholders.
Senator Petty.
Have we had any default on bonds in the
David?
10 years?
Not to my knowledge, not since I've been here. I'm not sure if we have ever in the state, but I'm dialing, shaking his head no. So I think the state has always made its debt service payments, so.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Clays.
So just to clarify, this is debt for operational expenses, or is this just any sort of capital expenditure debt?
David?
Mr. Chair, Senator, the amendment just says that the legislature could establish by law all matters of public debt. So it would be, if the amendment takes place, the legislature could kind of fill in through statute what types of debt could be issued and how. So.
Senator Fagg. Any other questions for David? Senator Petty.
So David, would that then extend down to any, I'll just use the school district. So school district goes out for a bond to build a new school building. That's public debt. Does this go down to that level or not?
David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, it's possible, I suppose, that the legislature under this authority could, by laws, change how other sort of debt is issued by political subdivisions of the state, but this would specifically be state debt on this and how the state would authorize that.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, David. We'll start out with the proponents. The proponent is Senator Fagg. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, Ranking Minority. A year ago, I sat in that chair over there, and we was going through, and we was going to pay off a $4 million debt. And it had an R behind it, and it had about 4 items listed there. Well, one of them was corrections. And I said, well, why are we doing revenue bonds on corrections? We don't get any money out of that kind of thing. So afterwards, I had a nice conversation with research on this. And basically what's happened is, in 1861, the public debt law, Article 11, Section 6 of the Kansas Constitution states, for the purpose of defraying extraordinary expenses and making public improvements, the state may contract public debts, but debt shall never in an aggregate exceed $1 million. So that was some of your relation, I think, Senator Pack. So our forefathers did not want us borrowing debt. So as you currently today, outstanding debt, SGF, is $1.5 billion, approximately in principal and interest payments, and $60.3 million in interest. Other funds is $2.6 billion in principal and annual interest payments of $136 million. So you say, well, how did they get around this, Mike? Well, in 1953, there's a law that come along, State versus the Armory Board, and the state Supreme Court decided that this only applied to debts paid by general property tax and not funds raised by other means. So it kind of got off into the area that they was saying that revenue bonds were okay. So let's talk about difference in bonds. One, general obligations are usually backed by the taxing authority of a bond issuer. Revenue bonds are just contractual agreement to pay off and limited to specific revenue streams such as fees paid at a parking garage. So when you look today at everything we do around here is revenue bonds. We do no state GO bonds. The cities do GO bonds, the counties do GO bonds. There's 40 states that do GO bonds. And it's one of those kind of things that says that common sense that says that we really need to have this in our financial toolbox. So as I say in here today, we're not asking to borrow money. It's to sit there and have this tool in the toolbox so that when we do, that would be one of the options they would have. So I've had a good conversation with our Treasurer Johnson, Adam Prophet. I haven't found anybody that says this is a bad idea. So it's the tough part of it, it takes the vote of the people. So that's where this comes in. An example of the most common general obligation bond is paid for by the general fund and backed by the taxing authority. States generally have high credit quality due to a broad authority they are granted to raise or lower taxes and implement new taxes or fees. So an example of this, if we come out and said, hey, we need to build a prison, $500 million. We looked last summer in July as an example, and the spread in that was like 30 basis points between revenue and GO. If we was to have a GO bond ability, that would save us about $1.5 million a year if we was to be able to do that. So it's the kind of thing that having that in the financial toolbox is something that I think makes a lot of sense going forward for our state. The markets change every day, so we have no idea what the spread would be whenever it's needed. But the time is set up. Whenever we need it, that's when I would envision they would look at their different tools and say, which is the best way to do this? Because right now we don't have a tool. It's one and that's it. So with that, kind of gives you a history of where it started and why, and I think this is a great thing for us to try to do to save some money around this place. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Senator Pegg. Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's about time we have you under oath standing in front of this committee, Senator Fagg. No, I'm just kidding. Is the reason behind this your belief that general obligation bonds are going to net a better interest rate than revenue bonds?
Yes, that's the sole reason right there.
Okay, and that's what I was thinking, because it looked like an explanatory statement that said that. So I'm just curious, in talking with people, and I don't know how many folks you've kind of talked with this, my concern when I initially read the amendment of the Constitution was people are going to think that we're now going to have more authority to get into debt.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm concerned about kind of the public perception of how this plays out and how we can be good stewards of helping them understand why this is necessary. Love your thoughts.
Senator Owens, if somebody was to ask me, I would say, if you're going to buy a house today, would you use a mortgage or a credit card? That's the way I would answer that.
Other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really like the fact that the Constitution limits debt to $1 million. I think that's probably about $1 million too high, but that's a whole other topic. Okay, in relationship to Senator Owens' question, general obligation and revenue bonds, different interest rate, and that's your whole proposal is to save money. I got that, I appreciate that. But can general obligation bonds interest be higher than revenue bonds?
Senator Peck.
Thank you. Senator Peck, I would, as we go forward in the future, it's never been higher. There's been a lot more spread to it. So it's kind of narrowed here over the years if you look at the history of that. Where we go tomorrow, you know, if there was a default on a revenue bond somewhere, that can make the spread go higher. So it's one of these kind of things that we don't know where it's going, but that's where that is in our financial toolbox, a tool, they can review that whenever we need to do that.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if this amendment were adopted, we could still issue either?
Either or, yes.
Okay. And I share the same concern as Senator Owens. I don't know that Kansas citizens will understand at all what we're talking about. And is your example of buying a house on a loan or credit really the only way that you could explain it?
I'll say that again, Senator Peck.
You said that you would ask someone who was confused on the amendment, would you buy a house with a loan or with a credit card?
Yeah.
Is that really the only way you can think of to explain it, Senator Fag?
Well, if this passes, I'll figure out something better than that, Senator Pack. I wanted to make it where you could understand it.
That can be challenging. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Senator, for your testimony, as you always say. I notice you have this for 2025 primary. Is there a reason for that? I mean, are you feeling press rushing for that, or?
Senator Fag.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Cluse, there's not a rush. The thought was that we have a whole bunch of resolutions coming up. I would rather this one stand by itself. And so the thought process was we don't need it at this point. We're just trying to get our house in order for future reasons. And not to confuse people by having 3 or 4 resolutions when they go in the voting booth. So if we don't do it in 2025, when do you do it?
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would there be a time when our revenue bonds, we would be overextended on revenue bonds, and then we could go to the GO bonds?
Senator Fag.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would hope that we're fiscally responsible enough to not let that happen. But I would think if you had a problem in one area, you'd have it in the other as far as debt repayment. So it's really just the structure of the debt's what it is.
We're not giving ourselves another credit card, is what I'm trying to get at.
No.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Senator Fag. Committee, there are no opponents. No opponents today, correct? Seeing none. Neutral? Anyone here neutral? Seeing none. We'll close our hearing on SCR 1612. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we work Senate Concurrent Resolution 1612 and pass the resolution favorably.
I have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Fag seconds. Oh. Okay. Other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries. Committee, that concludes our work for today, I believe. Nancy, is that right? Okay. So thank you all. Appreciate it. We are adjourned.